Something a little unusual today. I don't just review movies on this show. I review DVDs that I own, and uh, that can mean movies. It can mean TV shows. It can also mean music. If it's a music video collection, or if it's a live concert or whatever, I do have those as well. And today I am going to be reviewing the Genesis box set, the movie box, 1981 to 2007. For those of you who have been on Manic Expression since the beginning, actually before the beginning, back when I used to just write freelance, Genesis is my favorite band of all time. I am a Phil Collins fan as well, and I am unapologetic about it. I am here to say straight to the camera, I like Phil Collins. They went out of fashion around the time that I actually discovered them. They were sort of the darlings of the art rock movement in the 70s, and then the darlings of the pop rock movement in the 80s. But by the time the mid 90s came around, nobody was listening to Genesis, especially people my age. I was in high school. But I'll tell you why Genesis has a soft spot for me in my heart. Because prior to that, I was not really allowed to listen to contemporary music. My parents disapproved of it. And as embarrassed as I am to admit this, like the most contemporary music I got to hear was like Mariah Carey and Amy Grant. That's hard to admit on camera. Um, and then one day on the Fox network around 1993. So actually, I would have maybe just been in junior high. They were going to air, get this out, Genesis, The Way We Walk, live in concert. And I said to myself, okay, I don't know what this is, but like one of the songs, I don't even remember which one necessarily, sounded catchy, and I don't know why. There was something else on TV that night that I wanted to watch, so I recorded the Genesis concert, expecting it to be something where I would play it back once, record over it, and move on with my life. It was actually only half of a concert, interspliced with like interviews. They didn't even play entire songs. But by the end of that hour, my interest in music had completely changed. Moving forward, I would discover, at the time, what was the contemporary grunge, and rap music was becoming huge at the time, and I would go back and I would discover more bands from the 70s, and the sort of the different kinds of rock music that I had not been exposed to, the different kinds of music in general that I had not been exposed to. My love of classical music came from Genesis. My love of jazz came from Genesis. This band absolutely transformed the way I listen to music. Because I think that even in the 80s and early 90s, when they were sort of went commercial, nobody gave them credit. Because the sort of hardcore fans of the Peter Gabriel era hated that they went mainstream. But nobody was listening to prog rock in the 80s. And Genesis, despite the fact that they did have the big hits, they had Invisible Touch and Hold on My Heart and Into Deep and things like that. Genesis always included longer form songs and instrumental tracks on their albums. Right up to the end, the very last song of the very last Genesis album with Phil Collins is like a 12-minute song that is like 60% instrumental. And I don't ever hear Genesis fans necessarily complain about those songs. They complain about the hits. Even though the hits, to me, sound very unique, even for the time. They don't sound like everybody else. A song like I Can't Dance or That's All, I can't think of an equivalent to that. Like, oh God, everybody was doing that at the time. Now you can argue like the sort of 80s synth sound is maybe familiar to other things, but so many other bands were doing that. Bands that are not hated in retrospect. And I think the only explanation that I have is that as individual people, the members of the band, as they aged, became more and more and more conservative looking. They were getting older. They were middle-aged men by this time. They didn't have the long hair and the beards and the sort of kind of cool. I mean, there's lots of pictures of like Genesis from the 70s where Phil Collins, big old beard, long hair, like a pair of overalls and no shirt, you know. These guys were hip at one time. Sorta. They were never really that hip. But people remember them as being cooler than they were. And as they progressed, they started dressing like middle-aged men. They weren't dressing like, you know, Phil Collins was not Mick Jagger, who's like 900 years old at this point and still dresses like he did really in like 82. And people totally forgive Mick Jagger for it. The box set, which is actually the 5th box set, they reissued all of their albums except for their debut album, which they don't really have the rights to. Remastered them, did 3 box sets of that, did a box set of live albums, and then did a box set of their concerts that are available. There are, other than The Way We Walk, there is the Live at Wembley. There is the Mama Tour. 3 Sides Live. This one's interesting. I find this one fascinating. And I was at, not this particular concert because this was in Rome, but I went to go see them on this tour, their reunion tour. And what's interesting about this one is that they had just released the tour on DVD. And so they didn't want to necessarily have you re-buy that. They kind of wanted you to go out and buy the DVD. So when you get this case, there's no discs in it. There's a circular piece of paper that says, this is available here, go buy it and just stick the discs in. Which is cheap, in my opinion. I will give anybody who says that Genesis has milked their legacy in recent years, I'll give you that. And finally, they also have here this nifty little thing. It's 2 discs, like one here, and then this 3rd disc, which again also came in the When in Rome packaging, so you had to bring this one yourself. And a nice booklet with an essay in it and all sorts of archival pictures and this is where I will knock the box set down. The bonus disc has the behind the music from VH1 that they expanded on a little bit to include the reunion tour. But there's so much more they could have put on it. There's so much more they could have put on it. There are a couple of Genesis documentaries that had been available at the time, one of which never was released on DVD, that they could have easily put on here. They could have done all sorts of maybe archival interviews and rare little. I know that they've got footage of from other concerts in the past, and even if it was completely they were unable to clean it up, they could have easily put like individual songs, and like the quality wouldn't be great, but love to see it, just to see those songs being performed from the Gabriel era. And sadly, to me, the thing that again it very much annoys me about Genesis, they did do one post Phil Collins album with a Scottish singer named Ray Wilson, where they got him. He's a good 20 years younger than the other band members. And they got him really to try and appeal to a younger audience that wasn't interested. Ray Wilson was treated terribly by Mike Rutherford and Tony Banks. And he had a 3-album deal. He thought he was going to be, I'm the lead singer of this giant band now. He went out and bought a house, and halfway through the tour, they canceled the other half because the ticket sales just weren't there. And then they canceled the other 2 albums. And Ray Wilson got into quite a lot of financial trouble, as I understand it. There is, on YouTube, you can find a concert called Live in Poland, which was recorded and looks great. And it could have very easily been included on here as in a jewel case and stuff, or just a few tracks as a bonus on the bonus disc. But once again, Ray Wilson doesn't get even a mention, and it's a shame. I mean, that album's not the best, but I do think he deserved better. So this set, which is from a band that I dearly love and really does kind of, in a lot of ways, complete the collection as much as you're going to ever get. Again, they don't have their debut album in the entire collection. Each of the previous collections came with like their B-sides, but there's tons of B-sides that they omitted, especially the Ray Wilson ones. Which could have been, by the way, they could have done another album. They could have done just of their B-sides with Ray Wilson, because they did so many. A whole other album. Another like an album of B-sides, and put out a live album of the Live in Poland tour, which does exist as a bootleg. And they could have fulfilled their three album deal with him and gotten the guy out of financial trouble, and instead, he was never even told he was fired. He just, one day, they're just done. So, disappointing behavior from a band that I love so dearly. But for what you get with Genesis, the movie box, I'm going to give this 4 out of 5 stars. I'm knocking a star for what you don't get, because there's so much material that they had to work with. And having a whole DVD that is just not even an hour long behind the music, that was a huge waste. Giant waste. So, yeah, I'm going 4 out of 5 stars. I love this band. I know not everybody does, but this is my collection, so I talk about what I want.